Hey guys, and welcome back to AirHub 07. In today's video we'll be covering lift, so without further ado let's get started. What is lift? Well, the correct definition or textbook definition would be that lift is a force of the component of the aerodynamic forces perpendicular to the relative wind, which pushes the body upwards, opposing the gravitational pull downwards. Before moving on let's look at a more general idea of how lift works. So what we have in front of us here is a diagram of an airfoil. Airfoils are commonly found in airplane wings, where you might, if you look at the side profile of the wing, you'll see that it resembles this kind of teardrop shape, which is called an airfoil. So moving on to how lift is generated. So the relative wind that goes over or under the airfoil, well, air has mass to begin with, and due to the conservation of energy, because there is a force or pressure being pushed downwards on the airfoil, there must be a force pushing the airfoil upwards, and this sums up the general idea of how lift works. Obviously, there are more factors to consider, which we'll cover later on in this video. Now that we've gone over the general idea of how lift is generated, let's have a look at how one might go about calculating lift. So we have the airfoil shape again in front of us here, and let's assume that this airfoil is moving to the left hand side with a velocity of v ms minus 1, and we know that the fluid that it's in will be the air which it is passing through. So we'll have the air moving across the airfoil shape, and because it is moving against the direction of the relative wind, we will have an induced drag force. Let's call this force D at the end, and since it is generating lift, we have the lift force acting upwards, and let's call this force L. So we know that the air passing over or under the airfoil shape is generating a force against this shape. Let's just draw a few arrows to make it clear to you guys. And well, one might assume that, okay, so we know that there are all these forces acting on the airfoil shape. Well, can't we just simply sum it up and calculate what the lift force is? Well, we can't. So far we can't, at least, until like some major scientific breakthrough happens. But there are ways of approximating lift. Just to name one, there's a famous equation called the Navier-Stokes equation, which you might have heard of. Navier-Stokes equation. It is a set of equations used to help approximate lift, which takes many factors into account, such as thermal conductivity and so on. Now that we know that lift, there is no actual way of calculating the accurate value of lift, but only approximate the value of lift, let me show you one of the ways where you might make some assumptions to help you calculate what the lift is. So let's look at Cotte condition. So basically what happens in real life, where we have let's take into account again the airfoil shape. So essentially what would happen is the wind passing over the airfoil would create turbulence as it goes past the trailing edge. Just for your reference, this is what I mean by the trailing edge. The trailing edge. And let me go over. So normally what you'd have is the trailing edge, and right in front you would have something called the leading edge in the context of an airfoil. But Cotte condition discards this fact and assumes that, let me draw another diagram of an airfoil. It assumes that the wind just passing over the airfoil continues and moves at a steady, let's put it as steady motion. So it continues and moves along as a straight line. The air molecules continue, and they do not create turbulence. And this is called Cotte condition. So now that we've looked at what lift is, and we've looked at ways of approximating lift and why one cannot calculate the exact value of lift, let's have a look at the factors that affect lift. So first of all, one factor would be the object or shape of the body. So for instance, an airfoil would be better at would generate more lift in comparison to a square or rectangle. Next, we have the motion. And finally, we have the fluid in which the object or body is moving in. So an example of that would be air. Yeah. Additionally, we also have another factor that affects lift, and that is called the angle of attack. So basically what the angle of attack is, it's the angle between the line of the cord of an airfoil and the relative airflow. So let me show you what I mean by the cord line, if I haven't already explained what it is. So again, we have our airfoil shape in front of us. Airfoil, and we have our leading edge here, so the leading edge is in front, and we would have our trailing edge at the end. So our cord line would essentially be a straight line. Please do not adhere to this diagram to be specific. This is meant to be straight. This is meant. So yeah. So this is what our cord line is. Okay. Sorry. So the cord line is the line bit from our leading edge all the way to our trailing edge. And the angle of attack, so let's say for instance, let me draw another diagram of an airfoil. So let's assume that this is our cord line and the wind is, this is our incoming wind. So our angle of attack would be theta. And there is a limit to how great or big the angle of attack can be, and we have something called the critical angle of attack. And at the critical angle of attack, that's the maximum angle of attack. Let me just abbreviate here by saying AOA, at which lift can occur. Okay. So anything past the critical angle of attack, the plane will end up stalling. So critical angle of attack. So if our angle of attack is greater, the plane will end up stalling.